I feel like your whole Substack is the most beautifully curated rabbit hole.
I had a lot of people asking me about what I do as an art director. Misconception about art direction is that it's graphic design, but actually I wasn't doing any graphic design. I was creating concepts and doing research and doing productions. So I just wanted to have an art direction resource out there that wasn't about graphic design. Everything I find interesting, I just dump and I organize it. I turn that into a Substack post. First of all, it was just the urge to write. When I have an urge to do something, I just do it.
Because we're all just chronically online to just be informed. How do you avoid that?
I'm writing about it, so that's how I avoid it.
Welcome to Process the Podcast, a meeting of creative minds. Let's dive in. Hi.
Hi, how are you?
I'm really excited to chat to you.
Yeah, I'm also very excited. Also a little bit nervous, but super excited.
And you're an art director, but you're also probably behind one of the most prominent art direction, fashion industry, visual identity Substacks on the planet, which is crazy.
I didn't expect my Substack to be actually grow so much in the last few years because I didn't really promote it. I started 3 years ago and never really posted it on my Instagram and stuff, or I didn't want people from work to find out because I was like, who is she to talk about stuff? I think it just organically grew on Substack, people sharing it.
Well, I love it. And you've written recently a little bit about your own experience discovering Sofia Coppola at age 12 on Tumblr, and then meet him Kirchhoff, and then you went through Rookie Mag, which so many of us did. So talk to me about your experience really early on then with creativity and how you knew that you wanted to be a creative.
I feel like I was always quite creative when I grew up. I didn't really grow up in that of a creative environment because both my parents were police officers, so that's like very random. I was quite a shy kid, but I also loved playing outside and coming up with my stories. I think it started when just joining my mom to the supermarket, going to the magazine sections, opening all the magazines and begging if I could have one. Like when I finished the magazine, I would just keep all the images that I loved and made this little scrapbook, made little drawings and stuff. It was kind of like my ever-evolving mood board. And then when I feel a bit of a fossil saying this, but when the internet became more accessible and we had a laptop at home, I looked at my mom's Elle magazines in Grazia and I saw pictures of the runway. I knew the brands like Chanel and Louis Vuitton and stuff. Yeah, when I was on the laptop, I would Google them and then I find out about style.com, which is now known as Vogue Runway. And this whole world opened up for me. And back then, you actually had the credits everywhere listed in the corner. So I would look up the models on Google and then I would find this editorial from a model that wasn't in a magazine I had access to. All of it was posted on Tumblr, and then everything kind of like opened up for me because I found out about all these images I could never see in real life. Yeah, that's kind of how I then found all these editorials and images. And then I remember this specific image which had Haley Steinfeld, Chloe Grace Moretz and Elle Fanning. And they were all around my age back then. And I was like, oh, who are these people? They're so cool. Then I found out about Rodarty and Sofia Coppola and watched YouTube videos. Right. It just kind of went into a rabbit hole.
I feel like your whole Substack is the most beautifully curated rabbit hole. So now you are an art director yourself. So what are you doing day to day in your career? And where are you based?
So I'm currently based in the Netherlands. My day-to-day this year actually changed a lot from last year, because last year I was in a freelance job that was almost like a full-time job. I was working for almost 1.5 years on the same project, and then took some projects in the weekend of things that I really couldn't say no to and liked. That project was basically just kind of a traditional process. So we started with the research, creating the concepts, moving into pre-production, doing loads of shoots, also traveling, and then the post-production. This was just like a very long, stretched out project. Then in the evenings and weekends, I would write my Substack. At the end of last year, I decided to take a couple of months off to travel. And then I started to rethink everything because I felt like every project I got was the same type of work I used to do. So now I just took a step back, almost deleted like everything from my portfolio except for maybe 3 projects. Just try to find out what type of work I want to create when it's not so motivated by client sales. So I'm just working a lot with photographers at the moment, reaching out, pitching concepts to them, doing a lot of research, doing test shoots. And then I also, of course, have my client work, which sometimes it's a week, sometimes it's a month, sometimes it's just like a few days in between. So my everyday is a lot, but I do love working in the early mornings and in the evenings, and then do something more nice during the day, especially when it's spring now.
What does your personal work look like then?
I don't know yet, because I shot a lot of stuff, and I think sometimes I like it in a moment, but I don't like it afterwards. But I get a lot of inspiration from the body, like how the body moves, and of course it's also coming from my sportswear and fashion background, but I also just think the body as a canvas in fashion is something that I find really, really interesting. And at the moment, I just felt myself deep diving into this big research project where I'm investigating how the back of a woman is portrayed in fashion imagery over the past decades. For example, look at 90s images. It's kind of the heroine chic. It always felt a little bit fragile and vulnerable. But then if you look at images from the 80s where wellness and sports was really trendy, it's more portrayed as strength. And then earlier on, it was more to support the dress with the corsetry and all of that. So I'm just trying to get a lot of inspiration out of my visual research and then see how I can then later collaborate with photographers to brief them based on my findings of my research and create a body of work. And then I've also been pitching some editorials and have a few in the making at the moment. And I think also like the body language and all of that is kind of naturally coming back in my work for some reason, which I find very interesting.
Yeah, the way that you commented on your Substack about how you would love to also do a tangible visual binder for how Sofia Coppola did that for her cinematographers. Reading your Substack reminds me of my job because I cut so many corners when we move so fast. Like when you have a taste and you're working 5 days a week, I personally work 6.5 days a week often, and I'm cranking out shoots and I'm on set like 3 days in a week and we're just doing so much work. I have such a shorthand with my team now that they don't even need mood boards. They know exactly what that client's going to need and want. But that's not why we got into this job at all.
Yeah, that's also exactly why I'm taking a step back, because I did so many commercial jobs where it's really big clients and they have so many stakeholders and all of these people that need to approve it, and then the vision just gets diluted and everything moves so quick. Then I have like a day to come up with a concept. My work is more about being slow. Everything I research in my free time makes my client work a lot quicker because I also work a lot with my own intuition. But I was just wondering what I would create if I really take the time to think, which is very challenging if you don't have a brief.
Yeah, it's a luxury, but it's also too freeing. What do you think that you're trying to communicate in your work?
I try to answer this question more for myself, but I think taste is a topic that everyone's been talking about, and some people have really, really good taste and they completely understand what references are beautiful, but how do you jump from that gap of something that you find really beautiful to actually making something on that level as well? I sometimes work with photographers that have a specific vision for themselves and they do really know what they want to shoot, but then the images don't end up like that. I just really enjoy the research behind that and really dissecting every single image of each element, like what is the casting, what does the casting say, what is the lighting, and how to implement that in my own work to make that stronger. I think everyone who started out in the creative industry, you first work as a junior and you work with a team of people above you who you do the work, but they take the decisions or they kind of lead you a certain way. And then when I left my first job, I felt like the work was the work of the creative director, even though I did it, but it was not my vision. As I now grow every day in a bit more of a senior position, I need to figure out for myself where I want to lead people, but also what I want to teach more junior art directors underneath me on how to really think for themselves and how to understand how to jump from their mood board to actually creating high quality work.
Do you think that you've personally hit that moment where you've done the work and you've collaborated with photographers and the brief looks like the output? And it all is as you want it to be?
Yeah, I think with some projects I did, some projects I didn't. But then in the end, I'm also trying to not be too attached to the original plan, because sometimes on sets you come up with ideas or you really vibe with the photographer and then come up with something on the spot that actually turns out to be a lot better. In the end, if the clients are really happy with the results, it's good. They, of course, buy into something, so you do need to make up to the promise that you're giving them. And sometimes the promise ends up being better, and sometimes it ends up being slightly different. But if it's something that they're not mad about, I think that's fine. And I think in my personal work, I definitely have projects that I'm proud of and ended up as how I envisioned it. Sometimes I don't, but then I think reflecting on it and learning from it is also super valuable, because you don't need to show everything you did. I create a lot of shoots. I create a lot of projects that never see the light of day, but I learned a lot from it.
So they actually get shot?
Yeah, I do shoot with photographers and stuff, and then just never do anything with them. Maybe they do something with them, but I just also love creating. I hate sitting behind my laptop all day. I just like to make stuff.
There's something to be said about that, like just the sake of creating, not for posting it online, or of course there's like doing it for the folio, but I think if you kind of know, oh, this is not going to be used, I would always just feel like I'm wasting someone's time if I was to do that, because like the whole point of portfolio is so everybody can post it and get ahead and blah blah blah, but there's so much beauty and richness in just doing it for the sake of doing it.
Maybe I'm too specific, that can also be, but sometimes I just also have an idea and it's something that doesn't really fit with the rest of my work, but I still feel like I want to execute it because I enjoy doing it. And maybe if I have a couple of projects that feel experimental, I can just re-edit my portfolio to go a little bit of a different way, depending on where I feel like I want my work to go in the moment. There is something really freeing in creating something that's not to be shared. A lot of work gets treated simply as content. And I think content is just such a word that makes it feel like just output, even though there's a lot of thinking and effort behind it.
If you were to describe your taste to someone, how would you describe it?
I'm quite minimalist. I love it when an image has a really strong concept and everything that is in the image contributes to the concept, rather than a lot of decoration and drama and things that distract. I like it when your eye can rest on a part of the image and it makes you think about something instead of you don't know where to look at. Taste-wise, I do really get a lot of inspiration from the 90s and maybe like the 2010s, because that's just when I grew up and that's where I first started really getting into images. So a lot of these images feel nostalgic and I remember how it made me feel. Yeah, I think it's a really difficult question to describe taste, because I think taste is just such an accumulation of things. It's for everyone different, and I think there's no such thing as bad taste or good taste. It's just different taste. For sure.
There's so much there to unpack as well, because like, well, if somebody not necessarily had bad taste, but then why aren't they working? Like, why doesn't their work achieve what they want it to achieve? It's not because they have bad taste, but is it a technical thing? It's like that eye plus taste plus, it's so loaded.
But that's why I think sometimes some people have good taste, but they can't translate it to their work.
Yeah, and then how does somebody get better at that?
I think it's about training your eye, dissecting every single image. Like, what I try to tell people is, if you see an image, why do you like that image? Is it because of the lighting? Is it the composition? Is it the pose of the model? Is it the feeling it gives you? What is the feeling? Just ask yourself a lot of different questions about every image you put in a mood board. It makes it so much easier to explain the concept as well. And sometimes what I like to do is just not have a single mood board, but have, let's say, 6 pages of mood boards, and one is only the lighting, one is only the feeling, one is only the color palette, because sometimes you just can't get a reference that says it all.
Yeah, I had Bruna Volpe, who's an Australian art director, come on the podcast. She was telling me her decks are 120 pages and she goes through everything, but also not only does she sometimes do lots of different images in like the traditional mood board sense, but also does them just a mood board in the deck is just one image. That's it. Because one image will say enough. And I feel like sometimes we overcompensate by putting like 20 images on there. I can't really communicate that much, because it's like, well, what are we looking at here? Like, there's so much there.
Yeah, exactly. Like, you don't want a client to be distracted by things that you're not meant to say. If you have 10 images on a page and they're like, I don't like that color, but it's not about the color, but it's about the feeling, then it's better to just let it breathe. And if you have one image that describes the lighting perfectly, you don't need 10 images.
Yeah. So with 75,000 subscribers, which is so crazy, and a reputation built on thinking about images, not just making them, what is the question that you're trying to answer with all the writing that you're doing? Is it more of a personal diary and it's just gone viral enough that you now are ranking as one of the top Substackers, or is it something more than that, and you're like trying to answer a question within the visual identity breakdowns that you're doing?
I think it's been evolving. First, I started because of three reasons. First of all, it was just the urge to write. When I have an urge to do something, I just do it immediately. Then the second thing is I had a lot of people asking me about what I do as an art director, especially people I went to school with. And I think a misconception about art direction is that it's graphic design, but actually I wasn't doing any graphic design. I was creating concepts and doing research and doing productions. So I just wanted to have an art direction resource out there that wasn't about graphic design. And then the third was also I did a lot of research and I never really did anything with it. So I would read an article or read a book and find something really interesting and then just hope I will remember. And I think by writing about it and asking myself questions, what it did to me and what does this mean, I just had this accountability to myself to do more with what I was reading and actually understand what I'm doing, and this kind of just evolved. I think every year as I write more, my Substack evolves to something that I feel drawn to. Because of Substack, I do a lot more research as well. One of the questions I try to answer is why do we feel drawn to certain images, especially in a time where there's so many images online? Why do we save one image and not another? Why do we stop scrolling to look at an image but not at all of them? Trying to understand what it says about you and about your creative practice or type of work you want to create. And secondly, what I mentioned earlier is understanding this gap between the images you save and actually the images that you want to make. And how do you get to that level of understanding images to create work that actually says something and work that actually feels like you can create anything you want instead of feeling like, oh, I have this mood board but I just can't get it right. It demotivates people a lot, but then they just keep doing the same thing over and over again.
How do you go through the process of planning your articles?
I have a lot of drafts because I can get sick of a topic quite quickly. I'm someone who just likes to do a lot of different things, so I have maybe, let's say, like 20 drafts. What I do is I journal every morning, so I just free flow write and then talk about my day before and what I want to do and what problems I ran into, but also comments I've read. And then I basically identify something like, oh, maybe I want to write about this. So I open a draft and then I just start writing down keywords of things that I find interesting about this topic. Start to read about it, articles on different websites, watching YouTube videos and TikTok videos and all of that. And basically just make notes and add to it. And sometimes when I write about a specific topic, I take a side path into a different topic and then I just make a new draft again. Some posts, they just basically marinate over weeks or months because it's a challenging topic or I just don't know how to articulate what I want to say. And some I just basically create in one go, just basically have all these keywords and then start to organize them in paragraphs, write about it and then find the images and go into archives to find images that fit with that. It just starts from an intuition and then I write a lot of keywords and then I fill up the keywords with more information and then try to turn this into a flowing post.
It sounds so disorganized but organized.
I know exactly also where I can find everything on my laptop, but if someone else would be on my laptop, they would probably have no idea what's going on.
You recently diagnosed research procrastination. What is that? Explain what that is.
I think research procrastination is thinking that you're being productive, but you're not actually creating something. You're just collecting images and you're collecting inspiration, but you're not actually translating the inspiration to something you want to make. And I think a lot of people do this to collect loads of inspiration on Pinterest and collect all these images, but if you don't actually know what you're going to do with it, what's the point of collecting? I have a lot of research procrastination as well, which is more coming from the pressure to be perfect. Well, I'm actually not a perfectionist at all, but when I want to do something that's slightly out of my comfort zone, and for a lot of people that is actually producing a shoot. For me, it's not because I've done a lot, but for me, it's, for example, reaching out to a photographer that I really admire with a concept. I have it in my mind and I would just find everything not interesting or everything is just like I'm trying to find this golden inspiration that I think, wow, this person would really, really love this. I think this is great. Yeah, I think people who want to do, let's say, a more art-directed shoot or they don't quite know how to break into the industry or want to work with photographers or even photographers who want to shoot a personal project, they can look for inspiration forever and not do anything with it, which I think is really what research procrastination is about, so just not wanting to go out of your comfort zone.
Where do you go for inspiration? Obviously everywhere. You would be going everywhere, but when you start a project, where do you go? Do you go back to your Figma, or where do you actually start it?
I research so much in my free time. When I have a briefing call, I already make so many connections hearing what someone wants or what they envision. So I just write notes, and then once I have those notes, I simply just go to Google or see what I already have in my Figma and create a new research board for that. And I let myself go down rabbit holes. Sometimes I really love getting inspired by things that I don't expect to be inspired by. So I just really try to pay attention to things that I find really interesting, of something that I didn't expect to be interesting. For example, I think one of my biggest projects in my life right now is trying to get my driver's license. Everyone who knows me is like, okay, this is just like everything you talk about because it's really difficult. I wanted to get a Mini Cooper, so I went to the Mini Cooper dealer, and he had a lot of classic old cars, and this guy was so passionate, and he would talk about all these cars from the 60s and 70s and how he rented them out for the Mr. Bean movies. And for some reason, someone who doesn't really care about cars at all, I found everything so interesting. So when I went home, I went into the Getty archive, looked up Mini Cooper, and just went into this whole rabbit hole of Mini Cooper races in the UK. I just saved that in case I'm like, this could be interesting for a project one day, even if it's just the composition or the colors, or if a project is, I don't know, like around the UK or something like that. I think it could be really interesting. So I just let myself be inspired by the most random things.
When you go through that process of selection on Figma and stuff, like what other resources are you pulling from personally? Because Google and Pinterest and stuff are kind of surfacey. You're so detailed and deep. Like, I don't even think that Cosmos would have some of the references that you're pulling.
Most of it are actually from magazines. So I have a lot of magazines, and I bid on them on eBay religiously.
Like, what years are we talking about do you bid for?
Honestly, any year. Like even magazines from 2016 to the 70s. Anything really, especially the more independent magazines. Because I have a lot of, like the Vogues and Harper's Bazaar, because they're really easy to get. But then, for example, magazines like Self-Service or 030TC, they're a lot harder to get. And I would just bid on any that I don't have yet and go through them and save it. What I love about magazines is because they have a certain theme. So one issue could be, let's say, about love, and it's like a magazine from the 80s, and then every article and every post and all of it is about love. So there's so much context around it, and if you read the entire magazine, you just learn so much about the context of an image, which is something Pinterest could never give you, because you just see a random image. Often the credits got lost. You don't even know if it's from what year it is, if it was a campaign, if it was from a magazine, if it was just a random picture. So you just only like it because of the vibe and not because of what it says. I also purchased a lot of online archives, and I also look, for example, at a lot of school libraries. So for example, Central St. Martin's and Royal Academy of Arts, they have like an online library. I also love going to the Getty archive, because that's just unfiltered images from it's like documentary photography. So that's how people actually behave, which I find really interesting. Exhibitions as well, and just reading all the captions and kind of saving the handout and folder. I also look at, for example, representation agencies that represent a roster of photographers, and then I look at these photographers and then look them up on Instagram, and then see what stylist they tagged, and then look at what the stylist posted, and then what producer they tagged and what other shots they produced, and then look at the model and who she shot for. And
can you explain to me what aesthetic flattening is?
Aesthetic flattening is a concept by, I think, Kate Crawford, if I remember the name correctly. The meaning of images getting lost, and that's something that I just mentioned earlier, but from Pinterest, everyone is drawing from the same pool of images. And if everyone draws from the same pool of images, but they don't know why they're drawing from that, the work becomes the same as well, because they're pulling from the same inputs, which means a similar output. There's like 80% of these images have not been digitalized, especially from the 80s, 90s, early 2000s. I recently had this magazine, which I think was it was the Pop magazine, and I saw this super famous image of Tavi Gevinson, and I didn't even know it was part of this entire 16-page editorial because only this one image has been circulating online. So yeah, aesthetic flattening is just the idea of everyone pulling from the same pool of images and using that as inspiration to create new work. Back in the day, if you would have to create a mood board, you actually had to go to magazines and exhibitions or photograph people on the street or go to archives, and now you can just pull a concept together within 5 minutes because you click on one image, you get similar images, and then that could basically already be a concept.
Yeah, there's a really good resource called Frame Set. Have you ever used that?
No, I don't know it.
It's like Pinterest, but for cinematography. You would love it. It's really, really good. And it is that exact thing. Like, it solves your problems sometimes because you'll be like, I need a photo of a baby in natural light. And then you'll be like, okay, cool. So you just go baby, natural light, and then all this stuff comes up. So then it's really helpful. So it works when you're literally trying to place that. But when you're trying to identify a style, it wipes you out because you're just like, there's so much, too much choice. So you don't know what you like and what you're drawn to because everything is a thumbnail.
Do you use Shotdeck as well?
No, what's Shotdeck?
Oh, I love Shotdeck. It's basically film stills, and then you can also filter it. You could say time of day, time era, how many people in the frame, what composition. And they have like hundreds of thousands of films, but also really, really old independent art house films from the 30s to now, to commercials, to music videos. And it's such an amazing place to find references as well because they're coming from video.
Okay, I'll look into that for sure. So when you do visual curriculum, is that what you're trying to break out of? And like, are you trying to change where we get it all from?
So my point of the visual curriculum, it's actually not visual at all, but it's about understanding image history. Yeah, I don't know why I actually called it visual curriculum, mainly because I think it's about images, but I don't actually show images. So what I find really interesting is the idea of understanding images. So for example, some films, if you understand the concept of the female gaze, you understand what the film is about a lot better. A lot of people don't know these concepts, especially self-taught creative directors. I thought it was quite trendy where people were talking about like building their own curriculum, and it would be a couple of Substacks that they read, a couple of posts that they read. But what I loved from being in school, but I didn't study anything that was very theory heavy, but I did always look at this major called Fashion Theories. I looked at their book resource list and actually read these books. And I loved having people to talk about this book with people and kind of like dissecting what the concept of certain things were. So I decided to kind of build my own curriculum, but then almost created it as a classroom where people could discuss together about their findings and how to understand campaigns. It starts very simple with John Berger, Ways of Seeing, which I think is one of the most fundamental books because you understand the context you already bring to an image, which is the reason why some people like an image and some people don't like an image, why it evokes a certain feeling to some and not to others. And now I have the second part, which is about the female gaze and understanding perspectives and shot angles, but also how to portray women in photo and video or visual culture in general. Yeah, I basically created this to help people understand images in a more playful way, but also connect to a community so they can talk about it together, almost like a little classroom.
It's so good. Do you ever bring in your own work into those environments, or do people ever bring their own work into those environments?
Yeah, I actually saw people commenting with some images that they took during the week and then they completely analyzed it. So it was also very interesting for me to learn from them. And then my art direction program, I do talk a lot about my own work and how I present ideas, but also my journey from the beginning to end and mistakes that I made. It's very personal, which is something very out of my comfort zone for me because I like to just be a bit more sticking to the facts, I guess. Yeah, definitely people share their own work quite a lot. I love seeing people's work, and I also love asking in the Substack chat. If I, for example, look for a specific photographer, I ask if there's any people in the chat because I would love to see more of people that read my work and connect with them as well.
In a signature style piece, you described opening up a project folder 2 years ago and realizing that your work looked exactly like it, like current work. Can you unpack that? Like same palette, same everything. Were you expecting that?
Yes and no. I think the projects that I got, and I'm really grateful for everything I've learned for the past year, for all the projects I did. But a lot of it was the same client or similar clients, like Nike, Adidas, Jordan. Like those are all pretty much selling footwear and sportswear, and those projects move so extremely quickly. When a project is really quick and you get hired for something you've already done, people expect a certain thing of you, but also you don't have much time to think, so you go very quickly to something that you already feel comfortable with instead of trying to understand what your signature is. And I think a signature is something that, like, let's say sportswear is not a signature, that's just a niche. But I think a signature can be like using a specific way of lighting doesn't always have to be in sportswear. It can also be in product stills, in high fashion, in film. And I feel like I didn't really figure out what it was because I just got bored of my own work and I didn't feel excited about what I created. So I removed almost everything from my portfolio and just only kept a selection of stuff that I did like and kind of started rebuilding.
When we talk about looking sideways for things and not being in the same thing all the time. So obviously being in sportswear, like we're just regurgitating all of that work. I'm the same for my clients. I feel like I'm dying for a job. And the one that I got emailed about right before we opened up this call, I was like, oh my God, yes. Because like it's something that I'm really excited to do. Immediately the client dropped and I was like, yes, I can see it already, like in my head. But how do we continue to look sideways? So now that you've broken out of sportswear, what else are you looking at? Or what do you recommend people look at?
Well, I wasn't always just working in sportswear. I was also working in fashion, but then I took almost all my inspiration from fashion into sportswear, which is, I think, a lot of people reacted positively to. But for me, it just became a little bit boring. I try to just think about something where I haven't looked. Recently, I bought on Marktplaats, which is basically a Dutch eBay. I bought old Architectural Digest magazines from the 60s. I found so much set design inspiration that I would have never even thought of looking or thinking that would trigger me to come up with a concept. I think just the newness of looking somewhere where you haven't looked is really inspiring. Of course, you also find that in traveling and learning about cultures, looking at new types of brands. I also really love System magazine, and they have their entire archive online, so you can just browse through all the past issues, and they have interviews with insiders from the industry, and they talk about their process and their inspiration and all of that. Whenever someone that I find interesting says something, I just kind of look up what their inspiration is and just allow myself to click a link and then click another link and then look up a photographer and then find similar ones and just basically broaden my horizons. I think one of my weaknesses for a long time was thinking of what music to put in a campaign. I used to never listen to music until a few years ago because I just like cycling and stuff in silence and just hearing my environment. And then I started really getting into music and understanding what music can do to your feelings, to nostalgia and giving certain emotions. I just suddenly got so much inspiration from just listening to certain songs and imagine the concept. So that was something that was completely new inspiration for me, and it's probably very basic inspiration for most people.
How do you personally work on briefs? What's like the ideal time frame for you?
It depends on the scope of the project. I am actually a very quick worker, so I don't really care about time frame, but usually I start with the keywords, so I talk to the client or whoever it is giving me the brief, ask a lot of questions, just any question that comes up, and then write down all the keywords, create a word web. And this word web sometimes gets really big, but then I just let myself kind of explore all these words and then pull in images that I already have in my kind of offline library of things that I scanned, and just start dumping all these images and words and sentences and songs and films and all of it that I could think of. Once I have all of that, I start to group them into clusters, and I'm like, okay, this could be maybe a concept. And then I look at what's there and fill it up with more current things. So just images from Pinterest, let's say, because then I can just be like, okay, I'm looking for a reference that is showing red and blue together or something like a little bit more on the surface level, because I already have the images that say something, and that's just to fill up the mood board. And then I start to give it titles and write a very short description, and usually have then 3 to 5 concepts and try to have a little catch up with the client or the creative director to understand what they feel most drawn to. I also like to show the depth or the breadth of the concept. So, for example, saying what if statements. So, what if we take over New York and do this and this, like something that is part of the concept, and just write down lots of that so they get really excited, even if it's unrealistic. Yeah, once a concept is signed off, I just create a short list of photographers, stylists, talk to these people to get a vibe of if they're interested in the brief. Yeah, then move into pre-production and plan the shot list.
So do you find the clients are coming to you directly, or are they going to a producer and then the producer's coming to you? Like, are you the first port of call because you're the creative?
It depends on the agency. Like, I work a lot through agencies, sometimes directly, but mostly through agencies. And it depends on the size of the agency, because some agencies are just 2 or 3 people, and then I would just WhatsApp with the client and share references or screenshots of the process. Sometimes it's a really big agency, and then it's like through me communicating to the producer, who then communicates to the account manager, who communicates to the client, who gets then a whole debrief.
Yes, I know that very well. And you're like, okay, sure. When you think about your actual work of your own practice, where do you want this to go for Substack and for your own career?
I would really love to just get more involved in high fashion brands. I've worked with a lot of fashion brands, but some fashion brands that are a little bit more luxurious, but I do really love the idea of world building. And it sounds a bit cliche because everyone wants to work with the big brands, but I love heritage brands like, for example, Louis Vuitton, that have so much to pull from. Like, for example, they have this monogram campaign this year, and there's just so much history to tell and to bring back and to reference. So I would just really love to work with a brand where there's just so much to reference from the past and think how that can be translated to today. I'm just such a fan of magazines, and I know that the magazines today are really not like what it used to be, because there's so many ads and there's not as much as it used to be. But I would love to just work more on magazine editorials with photographers that I really like, because often there's not really a brief, or there's just a theme, and you can just really take the time to come up with a concept and do what you want and have a lot of fun with it. And of course, magazines don't pay, or barely pay at all. Yeah, I just really love the combination of also making a little bit of money with Substack on the side, taking some really commercial jobs, being able to reinvest that in my personal projects, and yeah, have to circle around it.
Would you ever start a brand?
A brand? I don't know. There's so many brands, and I think I never really looked in that much detail at products. I think starting a brand is really difficult, and my parents actually used to have a brand, like a bag brand, and I saw how many production issues you can have, because if you grow too fast, then they can't deliver, and then you have unhappy clients or customers, and it's just too many logistics for me. I would love to start a company one day, like maybe something in publishing, or maybe even like a library or something, like, I don't know.
Yeah, wow. I can kind of see that you would be really good, like partnering with somebody that's like logistically really, really good at the product side, but then you are in charge of the brand look and feel, the tone, and the connection with the customer of how they see things, and like are inspired to move into loving that brand.
Yeah, that would actually be so fun to just build an entire world from scratch. I went to Korea last year, and then, for example, Gentle Monster, that everyone knows, I feel like their brand is the brand, and their product is just kind of like just a vehicle to have a brand almost, but people don't even know Gentle Monster because the sunglasses are super nice. Like, they know it because of their stores and their campaigns and the ambassadors they have. So yeah, I would love to have a brand like Gentle Monster, but then what that would mean for me.
Yeah, it's pretty crazy. Like, to think I started a gummy brand and I really wanted to be so on top of the story and the branding and the art direction and all of that. And like my whole mood board was set, and like I loved it, and I really had this whole idea for it. But I just got pulled away so much by the logistical, like Shopify.com. And I was like, for fuck's sake, like this is so crazy. I had like a team working with me on my production company business. So sometimes they would dip in and help me with things like that. But yeah, mostly I did it by myself, and it's still going, but I just don't really give it that much love because you're in a visual industry. You want everything to be perfect and like be the way that you want it to be. But I only have time to make the Instagram content. I don't have time to make the art. You know what I mean? And it's just such a shame because then I trip over myself because I'm like, I really want to be able to put that out, but I can't, and then I'm just like, fuck it, I won't do any of it.
Yeah, and I think now also with social media, there is so much pressure on brand founders to create so much content, and usually it's a one-man show.
Yeah.
I'm like,
Yeah.
I already get tired thinking of it.
Yeah, totally. So when we study the ambitious and the famous, I've written this that we put them on a pedestal. Do you like your own work? And like what work where do you want to get to personally with a place that you are really proud of it? And how do we do that psychologically as creatives?
I don't think I like my own work. I do love some projects I did that I'm proud of, but most of it I think I also did in an agency structure and like a big commercial brand structure where there's just too many opinions, and in the end you just have to do things that you don't agree with, and there's only so much you can do to protect your vision. At the moment I don't love the work that I did because I just don't have the authority yet, I think. Yeah, I would see where this year of creating a lot of personal work brings me to. I'm actually in a few days I am doing a 3-day editorial marathon with some friends in Amsterdam, like a photographer, videographer, stylist. We have like probably like 10 models coming in and out, and we're just restyling shoots and just creating for fun. I kind of like missed being on set for a couple of days in a row. It's just, I think, stuff that will really contribute to understanding how I work and what I feel drawn to.
So how prepared are you for that shoot, for that marathon?
I think I'm pretty prepared. I created a lot of concepts, so probably have like 10 concepts written in a deck. I just get such a headache of the logistics. I found a producer yesterday who's helping us out, but just the casting was a lot because we have so many days and different models coming in and different models for different concepts, and then we had to find makeup artists and all of that. But we're all self-funding it, so we're kind of like doing it on a collaboration base. So it's been quite difficult because it was a spontaneous idea that immediately got brought into action while I'm still having my work next to it. But I think it will be really fun. Like in the end, it doesn't really matter. It's just also about having fun creating.
So you wrote an 8-part essay where luxury images are heading with the title, "The Directorial Eye is Back." And I'll read this from my notes. Gucci are replacing the runway show with the Spike Jonze and Helena Regent film. I direct film for brands as my job and magazines for a living, but tell me, as a director, what should I stop doing and what should I actually be doing to lead into that space rather than playing catch up? What are you seeing for video directors and that video world? Because obviously it's everywhere. Everyone has an iPhone, but then for Gucci to replace the runway with a film is crazy.
I think a lot of directors are treating fashion film kind of like long form lookbooks, and then we have like the zooming in on the details and all of that. And I literally feel like someone like Carrie Bradshaw is selling Fendi bags still much better than most Fendi campaigns right now, like video campaigns. And I think that's just because you kind of feel the garment, like it's part of the character and you feel emotionally connected to the character and there's a storyline. And I think that is just something that is really, really interesting about what Gucci did, because too many brand films just feel so structured around showing the product and the details around it. Yeah, I just feel like that's basically product photography in moving image type of form, and here there's just it's entertainment as well, so it doesn't feel as branded, and people love to be entertained and sucked into a story, and when you're sucked into a story you're automatically sucked into the brand world as well, which is essentially what you want people to be like. You want people to engage in your brand world, and this Gucci film just did it super well because you can really like feel the characters and the narrative and emotion and how these clothes kind of contribute to that. So I would say that, but also as a director, like bringing back Sofia Coppola, she has such a recognizable emotional tone to her work. So if brands want to work with her, she kind of becomes the concept, like the Cartier campaign. It's not like she's adapting to what Cartier's world is, but Cartier adapted to how she would translate it, because they kind of have an understanding of how she would do that. And I think that's really important as a director, that you do have your signatures or a feeling that you give to people. If you, for example, pitch a treatment, a lot of treatments are focused on how they show the product in the best lighting, but maybe it should be more about coming from your own worldview and your obsessions and how that relates to the brand, because a treatment just does so much to sell in the work, and a lot of treatments can be very boring.
Do you know Nadia Lee Cohen?
Yeah.
Her work, you can tell just like what she's obsessed with, and like you can tell that she's like a little bit of a freak just from how she, like her eye and how she does things. You kind of know what it's going to be like.
Like, you know what she will give you, but there's always something interesting and unexpected. And I also think that brands need to not be so afraid of slowness, because everyone just wants to capture the attention in the first 3 seconds and blah, blah, blah. We've been doing that now for so many years. There's only so much you can do that's new in the first 3 seconds. I just love that they went for a 30-minute film, and it asks a lot of their audience. Yeah, in the end they got so much more from it. Instead of content, it just felt like really diving into the brand world.
Yeah, crazy to imagine the meetings with the marketing team being like, we're not going to do this, we're going to do a film. Like, what? That would have been so hard to get over the line, but I loved it. You also wrote that the deliberate rejection of AI is becoming a luxury position. Hermes hiring that illustrator with the most gorgeous work and seeing analog come back. How do you feel about AI?
I don't think I'm anti-AI at all, actually. I think it's a tool that you need to master if you want to keep up with the industry today. But I do think you need to see it not as a replacement, but really a tool that can speed up your process. I fully generated AI campaigns being used as a replacement instead of using people. There's a lot of image rights issues to that as well, and also environmental issues and all of that. But I think using, for example, AI to speed up your workflow in Photoshop is different. Like, one kind of replaces the human thinking and the other one supports the workflow. I think the industry has gone through a lot of revolutions in the last few years, like even, for example, the green screen coming. That was something that people were really scared of, and now it's just such a part of the process that we can't really imagine it without it anymore. So I think that's the same with AI. Like, I think it can sound very negative to be anti-AI. It's like putting your head in the sand. But if you frame it more as embracing human craft, or like as a position for yourself, or like part of who you are as a creative, that changes your appeal and your story entirely, because in the end, Hermes would probably look at people who embrace craft rather than saying that they're anti-AI, and especially if you're an image maker or a photographer or multimedia artist, those people are really in demand because of what they do. But I also think AI can bring a lot of solutions. Like, for example, if a budget is too low to, let's say, shoot in New York, maybe there's a way to generate the backgrounds on a green screen and then shoots with really nice lighting and it looks like that. So I think a lot of things are going to be possible if you use it as a tool. I personally also use AI a lot to verify sources or ask if there's like, sometimes you can find things on Google because there's so many PDFs and stuff online. I would ask like AI, okay, I'm looking for a magazine that has an editorial or something on 90s football culture, and then it would give me a list of resources to look into, and I think that saves me so much time. So I think it's more about the idea of embracing human craft and using AI as a tool instead of as a replacement is really interesting. But then when you look at luxury brands, I think embracing human craft and using that almost as an identity or a proposition or whatever can help people look at their product in a way that also embraces human craft, especially if bags are handmade or they have a lot of history to it. It just helps with the messaging, and it also creates very beautiful work that makes them think outside the box, like how can we show something that shows the humanity of it instead of looking like something AI could do.
I think it's going to, we've mentioned like nostalgia and memories and all that stuff too. I think it's so important to keep in mind like what humans are actually drawn to and what we see ourselves in campaigns. Like that's why we usually get drawn to work, and like we can't see ourselves in a robot. And like there's just something about that makeup that we just reject.
Yeah, exactly. And I also think it's interesting to see how long this will hold, because even a few years ago, people were quitting their jobs to suddenly become like a metaverse expert, and then suddenly this whole term disappeared after a couple of months. And then I had so many briefs about brands wanting to invest in NFTs, and then the brief just never happened because NFTs was already a trend that was over. And I think obviously AI wouldn't leave because it's now already gotten so mainstream, and NFTs and metaverse never really got there. Yeah, I think there's also just a lot of trends as a reaction of, because it's such a hype topic of that people want to talk about it. So then if you do something that's against it, it can get people talking and celebrating it even more. But once it's something that's just so normal and part of life, then I think being either anti-AI or anti-whatever doesn't really do anything anymore. But right now we're seeing a lot of anti-AI campaigns, which shows a lot of new type of work that we haven't seen before, and it's really interesting.
Do you mean like the Hermes one?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, it's like searching people to like really put their mark on this is not AI. Like I love that they did that. I think I'd love to ask you about Quiet Luxury. Classic. So that whole piece is so quickly fracturing because it's just so outdated now. Like it's just been so overused. What do you think is the next visual language that we're going to be tired of perhaps in the next 18 months that everyone's currently congratulating themselves on making? But I have a prediction and I'd love to hear yours as well.
Honestly, I was reading this question and I had no idea at the moment.
I think it's going to be, you know, those videos that like are really like we're craftsmen and it's like and it's like a pin and a thread and a stitch and it I think that feeds into the anti-AI, but the way that that is so overdone right now. I think the way they started it.
So many brands do this. And one other thing that I also feel like, but it's not really something happening in luxury, but maybe it's me, but I feel like everyone is posting content about what they do and promoting themselves. And I feel like a lot of people that are very extroverted and very good speaking to the camera, they get a lot of interesting jobs. And I feel like sometimes you just don't have a chance anymore if you just don't put yourself out there so much online. And I'm wondering when that is going to break through, because video content has been such a thing for the last few years that I almost feel pressured that I have to do it as well, or literally anyone. And it works as well, like it works to put videos out there in TikTok and YouTube because it gets shared a lot. Yeah, I wonder if that is something that's going to be forever, if that's just it changed how to get work, or if it's just trendy now, like the girl boss time.
Yeah, true. And I think with the personal brand thing, I think the way that you have done art direction, like that is your personal brand. I think the passion is personal because you're so obsessed with it. Like you forage.
That's true, but I'm kind of separating it from myself because I think it's based on research. I do think often about the obsession with personal branding is gotten quite out of hand.
Yeah, it has. As somebody with a podcast, I'm like, oh, we have to do this again.
Yeah, but there's so much pressure as well because everyone feels the pressure to then have an Instagram and a TikTok and a YouTube and post snippets, and it's a lot.
Do you think that you'll overcome it, or do you think you will just exist and ride out the wave until it changes and settles down?
I don't really have a long-term strategy for what I'm doing. I just do it per day and see what happens. And I also feel like naturally my curiosity leads me to somewhere else, and then I just write about that. But I have been quite interested about featuring more people and doing interviews. I did this interview with the founder of Cosmos, which apparently people really liked. And there's only so much I can tell from my own perspective, and I've been writing now for 3 years. And I feel like I'm getting sometimes very boring or repeating things. Yeah, I would love to just feature more people, or maybe have like guest writers, or getting perspectives from experts in a specific field.
But I think what I love about your work is that they're never predictable images. Like even if I don't read the article, the stimulus that you have paired with it, they're images I would never see. otherwise. It's an experience of what can I be fed from your platforms that otherwise I'm going to get from literally nowhere else, unless I go to my parents' house and look through their 2002 Architectural Digest for my own set design inspiration. Like sometimes, you know how like we open our phones and we're just like kind of like expecting to be satisfied? The way that your curation of images and stuff, it's just always, I trust your taste because I love your taste, and because I love your taste and I identify with your taste, it's like a whole other resource visually that I can depend on to like surprise and delight me every single time. No matter what mood I'm in, I'm always like, oh wow, that's a great image. Like I would have never seen that.
Oh, thank you so much. That's nice.
You've been building frameworks of art direction for 3 years. If all of the work got deleted tomorrow, what would you wrap up? How do you leave your legacy with one sentence? Like, what is it that you're trying to communicate, and what is the work?
Question every choice you put in an image and bring it back to the concept if it's something you want to communicate or not. Have a concept that's very simple, and then every choice that you make, from casting to lighting to set to colors, does it communicate what you want your concept to communicate? So really question everything and don't make random choices.
How do you fight that though when you're like, as we said, diluted by the client, all the chefs in the kitchen, in agency land?
If you really know the concept in and out, and also make sure the client knows the concept in and out, you sometimes have to make decisions on sets. I am Dutch, I'm very direct. I would just say like, I would very quickly say no if my intuition says so. And if a client doesn't agree, I would remind them to the concept in the most straightforward way. And if that doesn't work, I will ask someone else to do it for me, like the photographer, if they trust that person more. And otherwise, I'll just take my defeat, because in the end they're paying, and if they want that, they're the ones hiring experts. And if they don't want to agree with them, then that's their own problem.
What else is on the cards for you for 2026? I feel like it's going to be a really, really big year for you.
Yeah, so I'm shooting a lot of editorials and personal projects. I am doing my research series, and I'm thinking about what the output could be. Yeah. Thinking about if I could maybe do like a series of publishing or making like a little magazine or something. Also going to pass my driver's license this year. I'm traveling to Australia as well. I traveled last year for a longer time, and it was with my ex-boyfriend. And now I just really want to do a solo trip, and I've been dreaming of Australia. That will be a very big thing for me this year, to go there and just really get inspired by literally the other side of the world. I haven't planned anything. I'm flying into Sydney and I'm flying back from Melbourne. And then I have like a month. But I'm also going to Korea before that.
Do you have friends here?
Yeah, I know a few people. And then I have a few friends that moved back to Australia because they visited there. Yeah, I'm just also going to see what will happen.
When you're in Australia, we'll have to hang out and I'll have to introduce you to creatives. Are you going to work when you're here?
Well, I'll probably have to write some Substacks, but I might want to do some shoots, yeah, depending on who I connect with beforehand and if I have the time.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, if you need any intros or anything, let me know.
Oh yeah, I will do. Very exciting.
It is really exciting. Australian creatives are so unique. We've got such a wealth of talent here.
And there's so many cool Australian brands.
You'll come to Australia and you'll be like, I get it now. This is the way of life, like sets the tone for our creative style for sure. Yeah. Like the Australian woman that's working, like that's why the brands are so cool, because they're literally designing for their peers, I think. But it's a pretty small community. Like it's pretty easy to crack into and meet people as well, because it's quite small.
Oh really? I imagine it to be so big because there's just so many in such a huge country.
It's small enough, like I know them all, you know? I know everybody that interests me.
Yeah, I think in general the creative industry is small though. I keep running into the same people and I barely even work in the Netherlands. Like I always work Paris, London, Berlin, Milan, and I've just worked with so many of the same creative directors that then switched companies and I suddenly see them again.
It's weird. It's like incestuous, isn't it? And you're like, what are you doing here? Oh, like where else would you go? This makes sense. Yeah, there's not that many places for people to go. Well, thank you so much for joining me. That was so fun. And I feel like I get it now. I get who you are and I get the art direction and I get Substack, and I'm so excited for the listeners to be reinvigorated to do the work. Thank you for all the work that you do, because it really is a treat getting all of your posts every week. I love it.
Well, thank you so much for having me, and this was my losing my podcast fraternity.
I know, it's so fun. Anyway, have the best day over there.
This podcast is a Tom production recorded on Aboriginal land.